You never really think a ramp can become a battleground until your son needs one to get out of the house, and someone in power decides to weaponize your parking spot against you. Our son, Tyler, is 9 years old. He was born with spina bifida, a condition that affects his ability to walk, and most days he uses a wheelchair to get around. He's a smart, sweet, endlessly curious kid who loves dinosaurs, puzzles, and riding in the front seat of our van, so he can ask questions about every billboard we pass. After his recent surgery, mobility had become even more difficult, and we were told by his physical therapist to avoid any heavy lifting or awkward angles for at least 6 weeks. To make this easier, I built a temporary wooden ramp from our front porch to the sidewalk so Tyler could wheel himself to our adapted van parked right in front of our home. We live in one of those suburban neighborhoods that looks beautiful on the surface, neatly trimmed lawns, identical mailboxes, and pastel-colored houses arranged like a movie set. But behind that neatness lies the true power of the neighborhood, the HOA. And the woman at the top of that power pyramid is Karen Whitmore. Imagine the kind of person who gets excited about filing noise complaints and who takes photos of your Halloween decorations because they're outside the regulation color palette. That's Karen. She runs the HOA like a private kingdom and treats the handbook like gospel, except when it doesn't suit her. Then she becomes the gospel. We weren't trying to start anything. We simply parked our van at the curb directly in front of our house so Tyler could get to his ramp easily. The driveway had a steep incline, and parking there made it nearly impossible to use the ramp safely. Our van had a legal aid placard on the dashboard, and we'd even emailed the HOA 2 weeks prior with a formal request for temporary curbside parking, explaining the situation and including a letter from Tyler's doctor. We didn't hear back, but we assumed silence meant acceptance. After all, it was clearly a medical necessity. That was our mistake. The next morning, as I was pouring coffee, my wife, Sarah, called out from the window with panic in her voice. "The van's gone. Did you move it?" I dropped my mug. "What?" We ran outside. Sure enough, our van, our only vehicle adapted for Tyler's needs, was missing. My first thought was that it had been stolen. Tyler, still in his pajamas, rolled onto the porch with a sleepy look on his face, and when he saw the empty curb, his lips started to tremble. "Where's the van?" Sarah called the police immediately. After a tense few minutes, the dispatcher told her the van hadn't been reported stolen, it had been towed. By order of the Homeowners Association, the words hit like a punch to the gut. I was furious. Not only had they towed a vehicle with a legal handicap placard, but they had also done it without notice, despite the medical request we had submitted. We checked our email again. No reply. Just our van gone, as if it had never belonged to us. We had to cancel Tyler's physical therapy that day. He sat in his wheelchair by the window all afternoon, watching the street. "I didn't mean to break the rules," he whispered to Sarah. My heart shattered into pieces. By evening, I was beyond done being polite. I walked into the HOA office, a prefab building at the edge of the neighborhood that somehow still managed to look smug. Karen was there, seated like a queen behind the front desk, sipping coffee and pretending to be busy with papers. "You towed our van," I said, my voice calm but shaking with anger. She looked up with that infuriating, surprised expression. "Oh yes, it was parked illegally, blocking part of the sidewalk, I believe. It was parked there for medical reasons. We submitted a request. It had an ADA placard. It was necessary for our son's ramp. Still a violation," she said. Shrugging, "Rules are rules." I stepped forward and placed our documents on the desk. Doctor's note, ADA guidelines, copy of our email request. She barely looked at them. "This isn't just a rule, Karen. This is a federal issue. The Americans with Disabilities Act." "I'm not a lawyer," she interrupted, waving her hand. "Take it up with the board if you like. I just enforce the rules." "You're not enforcing anything," I snapped. "You're targeting a child with a disability. That's not enforcement, that's cruelty." She blinked at me, cool as ever. "This conversation is over," she said. "Have a nice day." I walked out with my fists clenched, jaw tight. She thought she was untouchable. She thought we were just another family who'd grumble, pay the fee, and move on. but she didn't know who she was dealing with. I pulled out my phone and called Rachel, my cousin, and one of the most respected civil rights attorneys in our state. I told her everything. She didn't even let me finish before she said, "Oh, they're about to learn a hard lesson." I told Sarah we were going to fight. She looked at me, a little worried but relieved. Tyler, sitting in the living room with his toy dinosaur, looked up when he saw our faces. "Are we in trouble?" He asked. "No, buddy," I said, crouching next to him. "We're not in trouble. They are." He smiled just a little, and it was enough. That night, Rachel and I began gathering every document, every photo of the ramp, every screenshot of our email correspondence, and every relevant line of the ADA and Fair Housing Act. Karen thought we'd roll over. Instead, we were rolling into battle with the law on our side and something much stronger than HOA rules. Behind us, the need to protect our son's dignity. Rachel wasted no time. She was a quiet storm when it came to civil rights cases, and by the next morning, she had already outlined a strategy. She was methodical, organized, and most importantly, furious. She had handled multiple ADA violation cases before, but the fact that this one involved her cousin's son, a sweet boy who once gifted her a macaroni necklace at Thanksgiving, lit a particular fire in her. She wasn't just pursuing this as a lawyer. She was coming for justice like a freight train. Her first move was a strongly worded demand letter addressed to both the HOA and Karen directly. It cited no fewer than 3 separate ADA violations and added relevant clauses from the Fair Housing Act for good measure. The letter explained how denying reasonable accommodations like accessible parking in ramps was not only inhumane, but outright illegal. Rachel included pictures of the ramp, screenshots of our unanswered email request, and even a written statement from Tyler's physical therapist confirming that the curbside setup was medically necessary. She didn't stop there. She also sent a copy to the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, and to turn up the heat, she CC'd a few local reporters she had worked with before. Just in case anyone on the HOA board thought this would stay quiet. Karen didn't respond directly. In fact, she seemed to vanish into the background as soon as the legal pressure hit. But the HOA board, a mix of well-meaning but spineless residents, scrambled into damage control mode. They called a special emergency meeting 2 days later. I was invited, along with Rachel. She insisted I attend, not to argue, but to be visible, to be the father of the child they had wronged. The meeting took place in the same prefab HOA office. Karen was notably absent, though I noticed her car parked around the corner. Coward. The board members looked nervous. One of them, a balding man named Greg, who used to wave at Tyler when we passed his house, started by offering to refund the towing fee. Rachel didn't even blink. "This is not about $250. This is about violating federal law and stripping a disabled child of his dignity." Another board member, a woman named Denise, tried to apologize on Karen's behalf. "There was a misunderstanding." "No." Rachel cut in, her voice cool and razor sharp. "There was a pattern of behavior. You allowed your president to take punitive action against a family doing everything by the book. You ignored their formal request. You removed their only means of accessible transportation. You cost them medical appointments. You made a child feel like a burden. That's not a misunderstanding. That's liability." The room fell silent. The board asked for time to review options. Rachel gave them a deadline, 3 days. In those 3 days, things moved fast. The local news picked up the story, and after one of the reporters Rachel had CC'd reached out for an interview. The headline was damning. Family of disabled boy says HOA towed van ignored ADA protections. The piece ran with a photo of Tyler sitting in his wheelchair at the top of the now useless ramp, looking confused and a little heartbroken. It didn't take long for the community to react. Neighbors who had once nodded politely at HOA meetings were now showing up at our door with casseroles and offers to help. One neighbor, an elderly veteran, told us, "I fought for this country so kids like yours wouldn't have to fight at home online." Things were even worse for Karen. Someone posted the HOA's email chain to a neighborhood forum, and one message in particular went viral. In it, Karen wrote to the board, "If we start making exceptions for one family with a ramp, Soon we'll have people turning their yards into circus zones. The look of the neighborhood matters. We're not a rehab center. Asterisk those words sealed. Her fate, the Department of Justice opened a formal investigation. The board's lawyer, now very much aware of the legal firestorm they were in, advised them to settle as quickly and as quietly as possible. Rachel wasn't interested in quiet. Negotiations began soon after, and Rachel made her demands clear. A full public apology, ADA compliance training for all current and future HOA board members, a permanent, accessible parking space with curb cut in front of our home, and compensation. Not just for the towing, for the emotional damage, the missed therapy appointments, the public embarrassment, and the stress inflicted on a disabled child. They settled out of court for $110,000. The terms also included the removal of Karen Whitmore from her position as HOA president and a prohibition against her serving on any HOA board within the state for the next 5 years. The board signed off on the agreement, and Karen, when contacted for comment by the media, gave a vague, rambling statement about community standards and miscommunication before promptly deactivating her social media accounts and disappearing from public view. The ramp stayed, but now it led directly to a beautiful, professionally installed ADA-compliant parking space in front of our house, painted bright blue with the accessibility symbol as clear as the morning sky. Tyler was there. When the painters finished, he watched them work, holding a small American flag one of the neighbors had given him. And when the final coat dried, he looked up at me and smiled. So, we won. I knelt beside him, taking his small hand in mine. No, buddy, I said. **1. It was more than a victory over Karen. It was a reminder that rules without empathy are just cages. That community doesn't mean conformity, it means compassion. And that when someone uses power to hurt the vulnerable, sometimes it takes a little fire and a lot of love to set things right. A week later, Karen sold her house. A moving truck came one early morning, and she left without saying goodbye to anyone. Some said she was embarrassed. Others said she'd been asked to leave. I didn't care. What mattered was that Tyler could get to his van safely. What mattered was that we stood our ground. What mattered was that we made sure no other family in our neighborhood would ever have to choose between following a rule and caring for their child. And now, whenever Tyler sees the painted spot with his name on it, because yes, they added his name to the sign, he grins and says, "That's mine." Yes, son, it absolutely is.